in Minnesota. I'm your host, Alan Tracy.
And I'm Rahana Power.
And today we have Adam Colt from Z-Fest joining us today. Hello, Adam.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're excited that you were able to join us. Adam, we've got loads to chat about. But before we do, got to go and start with our standard, get to know you kind of questions. So can you first kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, some like a fun, interesting, maybe unique, whether it's like a skill, talent, story, adventure, anything?
Absolutely. Most people don't know that I have an album up on iTunes from the 80s. I still am a musician, composer, writer. And if people search for Levox, Levox, they find an 80s album up there that I produced when I was 20 years old in my very first recording studio.
Wow.
Yep. Back in the days when we had analog reel-to-reels. So.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
So do you have anything else coming out on?
I've been saying
for the public still?
5 years I want to get an album done, and I have written bits and pieces, but haven't finished anything up yet. So I'm really excited to get back to it. I've been working on my home studio for the last couple months, and hopefully it'll be up and running in the next month or so. So, yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's funny. Where did you record that album, may I ask? Was it here? Was it somewhere else? Or
actually, it's a long, drawn-out story, but here's the synopsis. I was the first kid on my block to have an Apple IIe, and I was the first kid to get involved with synthesizers and MIDI.
Oh, boy.
MIDI had just come out, so no one knew what it was except me. And I decided to open a recording studio, and so I rented 2,600 square feet in the middle of Edina, and had a lease that was way over my head, and got a couple partners that didn't do very much, and we ended up going for about 3 years and then shut her down. But in that time, I produced about 400 acts, including some of Prince's spin-offs. If you see Purple Rain, there's a group that dances in the upper balcony during the First Avenue scene. Yeah. And they started their own group called Split Level. And I used to record those guys at my studio, along with, anything from rap to commercials, TV commercials and stuff too.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So it was my studio, took a big loan out, took many years to pay it off, and I still have some of the equipment from that studio. And so my current studio is stocked with a lot of 80s and 90s and some 2000s, but and some current stuff too, of course. But yeah, and if anybody out there wants to come and play in my toy box, they're more than welcome to come on over and see what I got for keyboards and whatnot.
Wow.
There you go. That's an invitation right there. That sounds awesome.
Right. I'm going to pause here for a second. So, Adam, we're here to talk about Z-Fest mainly, but we'll get into a little bit about you too as well. A little further, I would say. But tell us about Z-Fest for those who don't know. What is Z-Fest?
Z-Fest is a short film competition started back in 2010, and it's loosely based on the 48-hour film festival. I participated in the 48 and had a lot of fun. There were a lot of things about the 48 that I thought were really rough, and I just thought, people spend. And I got this idea from the VP of Disney. There was a story I heard, and I'm probably paraphrasing it incorrectly, but basically, for a while there, Disney said, hey, let's not try to make blockbusters. Let's just make a whole bunch of mediocre films. And they did. And what they found out was that it takes just as much effort and just as much money and just as much time to make a mediocre film as it does to make a blockbuster. So they realized that, hey, why do we do that? So I kind of tied that into the 48 and said, why are we wasting our time running around making something mediocre in 48 hours when we could just have a little more time and make it so much better? And so first couple years we did like a week. Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, why does it have to be a week? Let's go a couple months. And then we went a couple months, and now we're pretty much opening up registration and, October, but we let people start filming over the summer and get the control element out as soon as we can, and let people go crazy and have as much time as they want. We've kind of figured that everyone who's already made a film for Z-Fest has already done so. So the new people are just hearing about it, and the old people have already done it. So the control element doesn't need to be as tight as it used to be. I don't think that cheating is a big thing on people's minds when you have 6 to 8 months to make a film. So that's kind of where we're at. Speaking of control elements, this year we did pick Jimmy Keebs as a fun control element.
Yeah. Jimmy Keebs. It said also a picture or something of him. I have an artist friend, and I imagine like creating a mural of him. I'm sure like Beckon or something would do this, but just like a mural of Jimmy Keebs in some fashion, So.
Exactly. That would be hilarious. I just rewatched St. Elmo's Fire, and there's a giant mural of Billy Idol on one of the walls. And I'm just like, it would be so amazing if somebody painted a mural of Jimmy Keebs on their wall.
Yes.
So right now you can use his photo, his likeness. You can mention his name. That's the easiest way to do the control element this year. Or you could actually cast him, and we're encouraging people to cast him as much as they can. He has been a staple in the background of a lot of Z-Fest films for many years. Right. And just a nice guy. He's a sweet guy. So it's been kind of an ongoing joke for years that Jimmy Keebs has been in so many films. He should be the control element. And this year we just kind of made it happen. So
yeah, I think I think he's been kind of helpful behind the scenes, as I recall, like fill people in on that. Like what is Jimmy to the festival?
He was our beer sponsor for a couple of years there when he worked at St. Paul Brewing. And it was fantastic working with him for that, because it's just like he knows the fest, he loves the fest. So for years we went with Grain Belt, and if Grain Belt listening, I apologize, but we basically had the big festival at the Radisson Blu, and what happened was the second year we did it there, we invited the people from Grain Belt to come, and the VP of Grain Belt came. But he was really mad at us because we hadn't gotten his beer in the venue, and we just didn't even think about that. And so he immediately said, "No, we're not sponsoring you guys anymore." And we're like, lost that opportunity there. But St. Paul Brewing stepped up, and Bartley has now stepped up, and so and the kickoff parties have been kind of virtual for the last couple of years, so there hasn't been a lot of need to have a keg at the kickoff.
Right. Yeah, I remember the last time I guess I participated was Z-Fest 10, and there was like food and drinks, and you could all kind of at the kickoff,
Pre-COVID, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, COVID kind of squashed all that. And we found that it was a little easier to do it without that kickoff party. We had one last year. Not a lot of people showed up, but we used to make it mandatory. And I think the mandatory part was great because people showed up, and we all had a great time. Once we made it optional, there wasn't as many people showing up. So.
Yeah, true. That makes sense.
Yep.
Well, so that's the control element. What are kind of some of the dates for this year? Where's the venue? I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, about theaters. So.
Absolutely. Well, obviously we've bounced around town quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first person to kind of find the Icon Theater, and I really loved it, but they really were a little spendy for us, and we couldn't continue to have it there. So we bounced around town and ended up at the Alamo. We really love the Alamo too, but then Alamo closed down during COVID, and they took a really long time to reopen. And they basically told us, sorry, but you need to find another venue. So that's when we found the Imagine, and they have embraced Z-Fest and really, really been super helpful, super sweet. And last year, at Z-Fest, the manager of Imagine said, well, you know what? We have a bigger bar, and we have a bigger lobby, and we have a bigger screen in Eagan. So why don't we move it there? And I'm like, sure. He goes,
yes.
I'll even give you the EMAX screen. And I'm like, are you kidding?
Whoa, really?
So this year, we've got the EMAX screen, which I believe is one of the largest screens in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be super exciting. We've never screened it there. Obviously, the procedure is exactly the same. We submit a hard drive with DCPs. And I think we were the first film festival to actually do DCPs. We did DCPs when DCPs were almost impossible to do.
Yes.
Many a nights of, converting and, getting into Linux programs and setting up, multiple machines. Yeah, it was pretty crazy back then. Now it's really simple. I found a dude in England, Carl Wetherington, who writes this cute little program called DCP-O-Matic. And
Yes.
I was one of Carl's first, supporters. And, we funded him. We gave him some money. And if you look on his website, we're posted, both Z-Fest and Adam Colt are posted as sponsors or supporters, sorry.
Wow, that's awesome.
And Carl, we used to actually have Carl go on camera and give an award for us, and the writer of DCP-O-Matic, but he just got too busy, and he's not really a good public figure. He's kind of shy, so we didn't want to keep pushing him into doing it every year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few questions there. Yeah, first off, DCPs are very foreign to me. I kind of get it. You need multiple tracks for surround if you do that. Then I know you have all your specs laid out on the website for 1080,
Yep.
2K, 4K scope, or flat. So yeah, talk about that a bit. Like, how has the process changed from like year one and then into DCPs? Like, what is this, 14 now?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah.
It's a little technical, but I'll try to make it a little more easy for the layman.
Yeah.
But basically, when you do a DCP, it takes every single frame of your video and prints it as a JPEG 2000, okay, which is just a different version of JPEG. And then it changes the color space from RGB to XYZ. And then it encodes the audio into PCM tracks that go into the file, and the audio gets muxed into an MXF, and the video gets muxed into an MXF, and the two MXFs get married to create a DCP.
You get that, Rahana? Does that make sense? Yeah.
So, it's over my head, but it sounds brilliant.
Yeah. It was created by the DCI with the Digital Cinema Initiative when they were switching over to digital playback. And they basically said, we need to have some standards here. We've seen the VHS and the Betamax wars. We've seen the DVD and the blue and the, HD DVD, Blu-ray and HD DVD wars. And we've seen all these different wars happen. So like right away, we're going to nip that in the bud. We're going to come up with some standards, and every theater will be the same. And that was a great thing. And now they're doing that with Atmos now too, which is, I can tell you a little bit about that. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yes.
But basically DCP, we used to have to do each stream by itself. So first thing we would do is rip every film into, a sequence, an image sequence of thousands of JPEG 2000s. Then we would have to convert those JPEG 2000s into XYZ color space. Then we would have to take the audio and make that an MXF file and then marry it all together in the end to make this DCP. And we would spend weeks and weeks doing this for the filmmakers. And it used to cost, $600-800 to make a DCP. Now I think it's down to like $250-300 if somebody does it for you, which is still expensive. But we've done that for free for every filmmaker since year 2. Year 1, we did a playback on an AJA device, but it was still HD. We've been the only film festival who's been HD every year, which is fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so it's a process. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot easier nowadays with Carl's program. And anyways, so we do all that for the filmmakers because we want it to be the best visual and audio experience. And we literally deliver it on a hard drive that slides right into the server at the theater, just like a Hollywood film does. And we deliver it in the same specs. And it's great. It's been working out really good.
I have a question about the Egan Theater. Does their Emax, what shape is that? Is that 4K? Is it Atmos? What is it? Their system there?
It is 4K and it is Atmos. It's the first Atmos theater.
Really? It is. Okay.
Now, I don't think we're going to get any Atmos films this year. That's also very technical.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone knows what 5.1 surround is, that's pretty common. It's the 5 speakers and then the subwoofer. Then they did 7.1 surround, which adds 2 more rear speakers. Then they did 9.1 surround, which adds more side speakers. And then they did Atmos, which is basically a 9.1 surround system with a virtual metadata tracks. Which, if you can imagine, you're playing a video game and, you've got somebody shooting at you from the left and then somebody jumping over your head from the right. They've really kind of figured all that out. So the sound moves in spatial audio, and they've figured that out in video games and in movie theaters now. So that's what surround does. It's this track that doesn't really, it's data, and the computer moves it across the ceiling in real time. And it's really cool how it all works.
That sounds great. What color space is that one? I'm the nerd in me wants to know all this.
XYZ is the color space for DCPs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I've learned a lot. I didn't know any of this.
I'm still learning too.
Yeah. And then 1 year we had a film and somebody's like, I color corrected for Rec 709. And I'm like, sure, Rec 709. Great. I don't even know what that is. So I had to do a lot of research and okay, now I know what Rec 709 is. So.
Or DCI P3 or PQ, it's like all these, and HDR is like the hardest thing right now. It's just like,
yep.
That's the new Blu-ray HD DVD war. It's like, what is HDR now? So it's like, oh yeah, is HDR in the theater too?
We're not doing a high frame rate or anything. I don't think that. I mean, as far as the playback goes, there's only one film that I went to was like The Hobbit in 3D with HDR, and I think that's what is that HFR? Sorry, high frame rate. HDR. What is that talking about?
High dynamic range.
High dynamic range. Correct. We are not doing that.
Okay.
that would take 2 images, because doesn't it do a very bright image and then a very dark image and then mix the 2 layers together to create the best of both worlds?
Kinda, yeah. It depends on the camera's dynamic range too. But yeah, it's I tested it out with like peak brightness up to 1,000 nits, and that's for screens. I don't know about projectors, but yeah, it's just the amount of brightness that comes from like a light source or something. So
yeah, they're just constantly doing amazing things, and they're adding new things to the specifications all the time.
Right.
So they always have to be backwards compatible, but yeah. So HDR and Atmos are 2 things we probably could do in the future, but I don't think people will take advantage of that just yet. People are still trying to figure out scope and flat.
Right. Yes. Anyways, let's see. Let's talk about kind of how we got to this space here. Like, how did Z-Fest, how did it start? Like, what was the idea there? Like you said, the 48-hour film fest, film project. And you wanted to expand on that. Like, what's kept it going though? Like, talk about that.
Well, what's kept it going is the filmmakers and their love of creating films. And I think what's helped us is that I think the filmmakers know we respect their art, and we try not to stretch their films or, destroy their audio. And, we try to have the best possible presentation in the best theater we can get our hands on. And we've always done that to really show the artists and the filmmakers that we really respect their art. And that's helped us in longevity, I think. Plus then the award show tended to be pretty good. Last year we had a technical glitch, but for the most of the time, the award show has been really fantastic. So
how can people enter? And when? Like, is there a specific time that they have to make sure they're in by in order to actually participate?
Actually, there is. Early bird registration just ended on Sunday. So now we're into standard registration, which is $150. And that's open until February 10th of next year. And then to compensate, I mean, we have a lot of stuff to do to prep the websites and stuff, clear out last year's data, set up new files for this year's data. So we usually open our registration in October, but we tell the filmmakers they can start filming, because a lot of people want to film in the summer. They don't want to film over the winter. So they want to get those summer colors or those fall colors. So we say, hey, go ahead. Here's the control element for this year. Start filming, but you can't register till October. And then, like I said, end of November, early bird ends, and then registration ends February 10th. So after February 10th, you can't join. This year, we started another 2 things that are a little different. We've dropped the high school registration price to $1, and the college and film school students are still $50. They always have been, and we keep that price constant. So even if they don't make the early bird, they still get the $50 for student films. And this year, we've started a new segment for composers and musicians. If they want to compete in their own category for original music, it's a completely separate competition other than the film competition. So think of it more of like a music video battle of the bands, where they can submit a music video that's going to be separate from the Z-Fest competition. Kind of getting Minneapolis into, this whole South by Southwest thing where there's music and art, and, it'd be really fun to have something up here like that. I don't know if we'll end up growing into that. I hope somebody does, because that would be really fun to have around the cities. But we are opening it up to music. And that is $50 for the music, guys. Yeah. Well, thank you. Every year we try to do some new ideas and try to make it more fun and let the teams have more fun and be creative. Oh, and then we also have decided that we are creating the all-star category, which means that the teams in the past who have won are competing against each other. They're no longer competing against the main bunch of films. So that they have a $1,000 prize all to themselves. And right now, I think we have only 2 or 3 all-star teams competing. So they have a 1 in 3 chance of winning that cash prize. And then another $1,000 goes to the rest of the films. And each year from now on, as the winners are new, because now there cannot be the same winner 2 years in a row. Every time a winner wins, they move into the all-star category and graduate to the next level. So we'll from here on out, hopefully people get it, that we'll always have a new team win Z-Fest every year.
That's really cool.
I like that. Yeah.
So kind of going off of that, like you've mentioned you're constantly adding things and trying to come up with new fun things to like incorporate. Is there anything that, maybe it's not going to be added this year, but a feature or addition that you're excited to hopefully implement coming, maybe it's next year, or maybe it's something you're trying to figure out, like how can this get added, but it's something you're really wanting to?
I think one of the things that I'm excited about adding is longer films. But unfortunately, we've kind of said it in the past. It's like, we need to have the competition at 7 minutes. That's a really good sweet spot. The judges like it. The blocks are really good. With 1 minute of credits, we've got 8 films, 11 films fit in a block. It's 88 minutes, which is perfect for screening. So, but then there are the times where people want to create a longer film. And I'm just like, so now they can create up to a 10-minute film. This year, I'm extending that to 12 minutes. So if somebody doesn't want to compete, but they want to show off their work, they can create a 12-minute film and just enter it and get screened. Oh. So that's kind of a fun new thing that we're adding as well.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So can you kind of talk to us a little bit about and just speak to, what the full process is for filmmakers? Like, what should they expect, especially if they're new to Z-Fest in general?
Well, we really don't help much with the pre-production or the production. We really have kind of stayed out of that arena on purpose because we want the filmmakers to make the film that they want to make. Harkening back to the 48 Hour, when they had a kickoff, you drew a genre from a hat. and you would have to make a Western or a musical, or, if you're a funny person, you still have to make a drama. It doesn't matter. So people would kind of think of that ahead of time. It's like, okay, we'll tweak our film to this if we get that. And then they have to work in, the person and the prop and all that other stuff. And we've purposely tried to make our props non-conspicuous. Last year it was a coffee mug. The year before that, it was a pair of glasses. Now, granted, once we got the actual glasses from the company, they were hideous. And I told everyone, please just hide them in the background somewhere. But some people wore them throughout the film. And I'm like, oh my God. So we really want people to just be clever. The year that we did time travel as the theme, we had some really clever things. Somebody had a Lego car that was like a DeLorean from Back to the Future that they just hid on a bookshelf. And the best one of that year was brilliant. I can't remember which film did it, but they spray painted, and I don't know, I hope they did it with washable paint, but they were downtown, they were filming in an alley, and they spray painted Bad Wolf on a box. And that's from Doctor Who. And that was their element. So I'm just like, that was so inconspicuous. You would have never caught it unless you were looking for it. And that's what I really want to get across to the teams. Like, please don't stay on car keys for 10 seconds. All we need is 2 seconds. Just make sure we can see that they're car keys, make sure that they're in the frame, make sure they don't get edited. A lot of people have shot their films and forgot they edited the control element out. And we're like, oh, where's your control element? Well, it was there. We edited that scene out. I'm like, well, you need it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So how many films does the festival usually get? And maybe even pre-pandemic versus during pandemic versus now post-pandemic?
The first year we opened, we got 18 films. And then we steadily grew from there. It jumped to 20, 25. And then we had a jump to 40. And that was really nice. And then we had a jump to 75. And that was pretty huge. And we were really scared that year that, we couldn't get all the DCPs done in time. But we did it. And then pandemic hit. And even during the pandemic, we still had 30, 35 teams. And then last year we had 60 plus, I think 65. So it was our second highest year. And this year we're on track to have the best year ever. We've already got 45 teams signed up, and it's not even December yet.
Wow.
So yeah, so post-pandemic is definitely, I think people realize that this is a fun game to play. We're one of the fairest around. We've always had 25 to 30 judges. We've always tried to split our judges male, female. We have judges in other states that don't know the teams or their production companies. And so everything balances out, when we do have some judges in town here, but everyone that I know keeps it really professional. And even if they know somebody in a film, they're honest and they're fair. And even if they're not fair, it doesn't matter because there's 20 other judges who are balancing it all out. So.
Yeah. And I can imagine that's pretty important regardless. I mean, because otherwise how do filmmakers learn and grow and yep. Get better throughout the following submissions. So.
That was another thing that bothered me with the 48 is they only had 2 or 3 judges, and it's they just picked their favorites,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's, so we got started in 2009, the fall of 2009. We were having a little bit of lull at Z Systems. I worked there. I no longer work there, but I work with them every year because they're still our founding sponsors. So, but I no longer work at Z Systems. But John came to the table and said, we've got some downtime. Do you guys want to do something creative? Hopefully something that will increase our business. And I said, well, there's a lot of people who don't even know you exist. Why don't we start a film festival so people can come to your lobby and know that you actually have gear and that you rent gear and that you help filmmakers, So he said, yeah, that's a great idea. And then my boss, John owns the company, John and Margie. And then my boss was Jay. And I remember Jay looking at me going you're crazy. There's no way you're going to pull this off. There's no time. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to make it happen. And we did. It was great.
So how do you even start I wouldn't know where to even begin when with the idea of I want to create and start a film festival. Like, where did you start and how did you even make it happen?
That's a great question. I just have a brain for kind of understanding stuff. I mean, I opened a recording studio at 19, just like, I just like, just do it. And that's a philosophy that's great for anyone who's listening out there. Don't be afraid, just do it. You know what I'm saying? If you fall on your face, get up and do it again. So it was one of those just do it moments. And, I have a weird thing. This is a okay sidebar for Adam. I just found out 2 years ago that I have this thing called aphantasia or aphantasia. Have you heard of it? Okay.
No.
No.
It's where when I close my eyes, I have a blank screen. I have a blank canvas. I have nothing. I have no visual recollection of anything. So when the teacher used to say, close your eyes and think of a beach or think of an apple, I used to think about an apple and I would think stuff like it's red, it's kind of round, it's got a stem and maybe a leaf, but I don't actually see it in my mind's eye. It's a blind mind's eye.
Interesting.
And that has created like a database. I had to compensate for that my whole life because I've always been this way. So I kind of think about things in order and in process in a database. So I'm really good at troubleshooting. I'm really good at signal flow. I'm good at like, that's how my brain functions. It's like, if you ask me to think about my mom's face, I can't. I can't see it. I know she's my mom and I would be able to recognize her if I saw her, and that's what my friends laugh at me because I draw like a 2-year-old because when I draw, it's all just stick figures and stuff because I don't see anything in my mind's eye. I just have to like draw a shape. Okay. I know heads are round. I know eyeballs are round. I know noses are kind of triangular. So
Interesting. So,
yep.
in that case, how did you even get the word out? Like you've created this festival, you've got it all set up, you know, rules and steps and process and everything. How did people
Always,
know to submit?
it's always been kind of word of mouth. We did start a Facebook group pretty early on. And then we got a website going after year 3, I think. But yeah, it's always been kind of word of mouth. Somebody did it and they thought they had fun. I don't even know how we got the word out the first year. So I don't remember that far. But after that, it just kind of grew and grew. And now I think people really just know about it. And when we do a post on Facebook or we have about 1,200 people in the email list. We send that out and people get to know that it's happening. It's Z-Fest season. It's open.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's kind of a known thing for most people who participate. Obviously, you said like 75 teams one year. So it's like, yeah, people know about it.
Yep.
And it's competition based. So it's, that type of festival.
Yep.
So you can expect something different each year.
Which is a plus and a minus, by the way.
Yes. I think also it's like really nice that you have the awards set up the way you do, or Best of Fest and the awards, because it also helps recognize local talent here, I think.
Yep.
How do you feel about like that? How do you organize a showcase like that instead of, I know previous years it may have been different. Like how does that evolve too?
Yeah, the first year we didn't even have a Best of Fest. It was very much like the 48 where we just called people to the front and said, here's your certificate.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Go home. And then this third year, I think we started doing the acrylic awards, or maybe I think we did the acrylics from the beginning. So we did have nice awards from the beginning, which I thought was like better than a piece of paper. It's like, here's an acrylic award.
Yeah.
But then we realized that, people wanted a bigger production, a bigger show. Everyone kept saying, your Best of Fest is kind of weak. And so we took that feedback to heart and we tried to book a venue at the Mall of America because we were able to get the Mall of America screens one year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking and then it just happened that the Radisson was attached and that they had the big ballrooms and they were willing to work with us.
Mm-hmm.
First year, they would only give us a Thursday or a Wednesday, but eventually they're like, okay, you can have a Friday, So that was nice. And then the first theater to give us a Friday was the New Hope Cinema Grill. And
Mm,
so that's why we went there, because we're like, Friday nights are the bomb. Friday, Saturday nights are the bomb.
right.
This midweek stuff just kind of blows. And still it's the 48 still kind of does a midweek thing too, because it's less expensive. It's easier to book. The Icon Theater was the theater that told us why. They said, and I quote, studios are like children. They don't care. Movie studios are like children. They don't care about your toys until you try to take them away. So when you try to take away one of their Friday nights or their Saturday nights, they come down on the theater hard. And so it's really
Oh,
hard for independents to get Fridays and Saturdays. And it's amazing that Alamo worked with us and Imagine's working with us, and they're giving us those Friday and Saturday nights.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's excellent. We love Imagine here. We worked through their sports bracket one year during the pandemic. So they had like sports movie bracket. So it was kind of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, Imagine's great to work with locally here. I guess they're kind of regional too, but
Obviously the local manager, Tony, he's amazing. He's super fun to work with. And he really gets the festival, and he really loves what we're doing. And that's really important. Alamo was very corporate. Everything had to run through them, and they just didn't understand us. It was a little tricky to navigate those waters.
really, that's
Yeah,
surprising because they're like based in Austin, right? They know about Austin Film Festival, all that sort of thing, right?
you would think, but they were really, really hard to work with year one. And
Huh.
once we showed them that, like, we literally sell out, we pack your house.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, we get it, we'll work with you. And
Yeah,
so,
your biggest theater is sold out, and it's like, oh,
yeah. The thing about people don't know about the Alamo though is that the front lobby bar is separate from the theater, so it's kind of a general concessions. So during our snowstorm year at the Alamo, everyone came in from the cold, went and grabbed a hot drink or a beer or something to mellow out from driving white knuckled across town,
yeah.
right? And all that money went to the theater directly, and none of it applied to our credit. So at the end of the night, even though we just maxed out their house and capacity, they're like, yeah, you still owe us a ton of money. And we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, that doesn't count. Your people have to order their drinks in the theater, not at the bar. And we're like, oh my God.
That's insane.
Oh,
That's a big piece of information to not share with you ahead of time.
right.
Well, they kind of did, but and what was funny though, because the first night we just kept trying to push people away from the bar, but obviously people wanted their drinks,
They want to socialize. Yeah.
and their staff didn't understand that we were a crazy crowd that loves food and drinks, and they literally couldn't keep up. And we had people complaining. It's like, hey, I've been waiting 20 minutes for them to come back and take my order. And I'm like, you're going to bill us even though we had the crowd and everyone wanted to spend money because of the incompetence of your staff and your managers, because you couldn't provide food and beverage fast enough to do sales, and you didn't hit the quotas and the margins for us, and you're going to still bill us on top of it.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so the second year we said, hey, listen, this isn't going to fly with us anymore.
Right.
It's
Plus,
like,
Woodbury's kind of a hike for a lot of people, so it's kind of like,
Mhm.
yeah,
so
I
we
think,
we do love Alamo, but it was a little
yeah,
tricky.
yeah,
Mhm.
nice screen, nice projector, all that stuff.
Oh,
But,
laser. I mean, 4K laser. That is like the bomb, the brightest, most intense colors and stuff.
look great. Yeah, yeah. I had to film there that year, or a few films.
Yeah.
um,
They did invite us back. So they want us back, but right now we're kind of in bed with Imagine, and because Imagine offered up the Emacs, what more do you want there?
yeah, I think Imagine's great to work with. They're very, I don't know, they're very down to earth, I'd say, as a theater venue. So
Yes. And they feel more local.
Mhm.
I don't have to go to corporate to make decisions. Last year was the first year that the theater allowed us to sell tickets on their website. And we've never had that before. We've always had to do our tickets manually. And
Mm.
I said, I'll pay the fees, if you want. if you can do the assigned seating for us, you already have a system built. Just put us in it, you know? And it's really hard for independents to get into those systems. They just don't want, they don't want to share that stuff with us.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that people don't realize. It's really hard to navigate. Even the Radisson last year. Oh my God.
Tell us, what is it?
Yeah. So
Spill the tea.
every year we've had the ballroom A and B, right? So we've had these big ballrooms, and we're able to get a lot of, 400 people into those ballrooms, but it's always kind of cramped at 400 where we kind of top out. And so last year I go into the space, and we have weeks of design meetings of like how we want the stage set up and where we're going to put the screens and blah, blah, blah. And I get there and everything is wrong. The stage is in the center of the room. The screens are too far apart. And I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, well, this is what they sent over. So the Radisson had sent over one of the early not approved drawings to their people to set it all up. So I walk into the room literally like 2 hours before we're going to go live. And I'm like, we have to move all of these tables. We have to remove the stage. We have to lower the second screens. I was in a panic mode. And I'm just like, oh, why is this wrong? And my brain couldn't wrap around. Why was this so weird? Why was it so different this year? Well, they took the wall down. They gave us ballroom C. So we had A, B, and C. So the space was a third bigger than it normally was. And I'm like, wow. Well, are you guys going to charge us extra for ballroom C? And they're like, no. It's like, we can never use ballroom C because you guys are always too loud. And I'm like, so why haven't you given us ballroom C all these years? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, are you shitting me?
Oh my God.
Why can't we have ballroom C? So we tried it and it worked. But the problem last year was that our stage had been moved over another 20 feet, which just put it out of range of during testing, it worked great. But when all the people came in and all the cell phones came in, our wireless communication to the podium failed.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So
all that 5G, huh?
All that 5G. And so we figured it out. We're hopefully have it solved for this year, but it had never failed in the 12 years we've done it before. And just having that extra 25 feet and all those people with all the new phones out there was enough to just jam the network.
Wow.
So, and we run into that stuff, rarely, but it does happen.
Huh.
That's nuts. Can you tell us about, so Louis Anderson, who's no longer with us, has been a judge. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and working with him and getting him involved?
Yes, Louis is awesome. So when I was back in 94, before most of you guys were born, I was working on a CD-ROM game. And my brother was going to be the lead. And then we wanted to get a comedic write on it. And I'm like, well, who's a comedian from Minneapolis? And it was like, well, Louis Anderson's a comedian. So we worked our hardest to get in touch with Louis Anderson, and it just didn't work. And 2 years later, my brother moved out to LA to become an actor. And he ended up, one of his best friends happened to be Louis Anderson's video editor. And I'm like, what? And so my brother ended up teaming up with Louis and eventually becoming Louis's manager. And eventually like sharing his house.
What?
So yes, I know. Isn't this crazy?
Wow.
So I've known Louis for years. He's actually spent Christmas in my living room and it's been a lot of fun. So during his bout with cancer, I ended up spending a week out there and giving him some hospice care. And so Louis and I got to spend about a week alone together. It was very nice. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. But he was a judge from the very beginning, basically, and said, I really love what you're doing. I want to support it. And he actually came up with the idea for his script contest, and we held a script contest. And then one of the teams won the Louis Anderson script contest, and Louis was going to be in his short film. And then COVID hit, and Louis, because he's a high risk, couldn't film. And then shortly after that, he got sick. He had to keep it under wraps for a while. and then eventually he passed. So unfortunately, I had to apologize to the filmmaker. I'm like, I'm really sorry, Louis didn't get to be in your film, and
Oh,
but he was very understanding. And
Oh, wow.
but it was Louis' idea to actually make more Minnesota films and work with the Z Fest filmmakers, and I thought that was really just a lovely thought.
I
So
love that. It's
yeah.
really
Such
heartwarming.
such a loss for the festival too. I mean, talk about a great person to have on board, and then unfortunately what happened. So
yeah, I think the filmmakers really enjoyed having the Louis watch their films and pick their favorite.
right.
Uh, you know, um, and we are still having the Louis Anderson Award in his honor. Abraham picked it last year. We were trying to get things set up with Carrot Top to do it because we know Carrot Top pretty well, and so but that didn't work out. We might be able to pull it off this year. We don't know. So, but it'd be nice to have a comedian pick a comedic film for the Louis
Mhm.
Anderson's favorite.
Oh yeah, tell us just real quickly, like kind of a general genre mix of the festival. Like how do you what do you see mostly? What's the trend usually at Z Fest?
The trend is chaos. Every year we get anything from silent films to animations to, music videos. Most of the films are either comedies or dramas, but we do have a strong group of people that love making horror adventure. And so a lot of people are like Z Fest, Zombie Fest, right? I'm like, no, it's not a zombie fest. Not all horror. I tell filmmakers, I'm like, comedy works really well because you can tell a 7-minute joke. Comedy just works really naturally in a 7-minute short film. Drama, it's a little hard to really tell a great story in 7 minutes,
Yeah,
but
more time.
there's been, some teams have done fantastic work with using already set up scenarios like alcoholism or abuse or, missing parents or, things of those natures that in the past that have just worked really well because right away it's like absentee dad. Okay, everyone knows what that is, and you can start a story right there and get into it. Last year we had that great film where the mom died and the cop showed up, and I think Nathan Block was part of that one. I can't remember the name of it right now,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
yeah. So obviously death and all those issues are really hard to tackle, but a lot of times teams do it really, really well.
Mhm.
So we had a great film about homelessness one year too.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting year. So
Wow. So as the actual like festival, the screenings and all of that kind of start coming up and you're getting ready for it, is there a part of the festival overall that you get most excited about that is maybe like your favorite outside of getting to obviously watch these incredible films?
I think my favorite part about the festival is just meeting new people and working with new teams and working with the artists themselves. I tend to try to keep myself super even keeled. I pretty much do everything myself these days, believe it or not. So
Oh
putting
my.
call out to your listeners to say, hey, I'm not going to be around forever. If somebody wants to help out, jump on board and learn how to do this, it would be
There it
great.
is.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We
So
need a Padawan
yes, I need
learner.
a Padawan. A couple Padawans would be great. We have tried to take volunteers, but honestly, it's weird because it's like, it's one of those things like a fast food restaurant. Oh, they didn't show up for their shift. Like, what do you do? How do you, when you only have 5 people and you need 5 people and 2 people don't show up? It's like, so I tend to use a lot of family and friends that can really count on being there. And it's like, I know you're going to be there. Um, but it would be great to have some new volunteers for certain things that get trained in advance and just know how to do it. Um,
Right.
one of which would be DCPing. If anyone wants to learn how to make DCPs, come on over. I'll teach you how to make DCPs and spend 3 or 4 nights together making DCPs.
That'd be great. Yeah. I need to learn that, I think. So we shall see.
So
uh,
again, throughout the film festival, I try to keep an even keel, and there's really no highlight for me until the screenings. And during the general screenings, just seeing people's reactions to all the films and seeing how well the films play on the big screen, because they play completely different. I got to give a shout out to the filmmaker who made Kicked in the Nuts. He made a film called that. And on the small screen on YouTube, it just did not work. It was so bad. And then when it got on the big screen, it was one of the funniest things ever. And the timing was perfect and the laughter was great. And so if you ever get a share, I don't know if that'll be screened on the big screen again anytime soon, but sometimes the big screen is just the right place for the films to be screened, and they just work so much better than they do on the small screen. So.
Well, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself. We know you once produced your own music. You worked at Z Systems. What's kind of your the other 3/4 of your life aside from Z Fest of the year?
I'm a family guy. I got married, and I had 3 kids. Been married for almost 30 years now, which is kind of fun. I'm really old, by the way. And music was acting was my first passion. Very few people know this. In 5th grade, my teacher dragged us down to the children's theater and we saw Little Mermaid. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. And I'm like, I got to be there. This is exactly what I want to do. And so they said, you have to be 12 years old or in 7th grade. So in 7th grade, I was 11. I started school a year early, which was also a minus, but a plus. And I auditioned with 500 kids, and I was one of the 50 kids picked to be in theater school. So my parents, every day, they'd drive me from Lakeville, Minnesota to downtown, and I would do half a day at regular school and half a day at theater school. And then I just started getting roles. It was amazing. I got to do the lead in Christmas Carol at the Children's Theater. I was the child Scrooge.
Ooh.
And then the Guthrie saw me in that production. They're like, we want you to audition for our place. And I auditioned. There was one role for one child in the whole production. And I auditioned with 100 other kids and I got the part. And so it was like, great. So I was really just doing it. And everyone's like, well, you need to be doing commercials. And so I was auditioning for TV commercials and movies even. I auditioned with Matt Damon one time. It was pretty fun. So, but the problem was I was one of those kids who, even though I was 16 and had my driver's license, looked like I was 10, So there'd be like, well, you have to date a girl in this scene and you look like you're 10. So there's no way we can do this. So, I would have worked perfectly as one of those nerdy little short, smart kids in those, like the Goonies or whatever. I would have been perfect in those movies back in the day. Didn't get the chance. My mom got pregnant with my younger brother, who's 13 years younger than me. And she said, I can't drive you around anymore. Your career is done. And I'm like, oh. So living in Minnesota, there was no other opportunities. There was no bus or MTC from Lakeville to downtown back in those days. So there was no way to get there. And so I switched to music. And so I started writing and playing guitar and, recording my own songs and stuff like that. And then the second I got out of high school, I went to college for a little while, did not love it. But I had a passion for music. So that's when I quit college and opened my recording studio.
Wow. So do your kids, have you seen that they have they have interests in acting in films or filmmaking or even music, kind of taking after you a little bit?
Yes, in a different way though. It's interesting because we let them just pick whatever they wanted to do. But my son ended up going to not the high school of recording arts. He went to Main Street School for Performing Arts, MSSPA, in Hopkins. And he really liked acting and doing musicals and stuff like that. So he is actually a very good singer and a pretty good actor. But he decided to be pre-med and do something else. And now he's doing something else in life. So I hope he comes back to that because he was really good at it. And he had a passion for it. And then my youngest, He actually is out at Cal Arts right now, and he is doing behind the scenes stuff. So he's designing sets and building sets and doing all the theatrical productions for theater, not film. But he's behind the scenes. But during his whole career, he was in a ton of productions and had a lot of fun with acting on stage as well. My daughter was a gymnast, so she went the sports route.
Wow.
And she ended up being on the Minnesota Gophers gymnastics team at the U of M. So she did really well. And she was our little sports girl. So every day I got in the car and drove my son to St. Paul to the Landmark Center for a play. And my wife got in the car and drove my daughter up to Hasty, Clearwater, which is way up there, halfway to Alexandria, for gymnastics. And we would just look at each other, hand each other a bag of dinner and give each other a high five and jump in the car and go opposite directions.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. So the kids do have it. I'm super proud of them all. But they're all different,
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which makes it fun.
yes.
Awesome. Well, Adam, if people want to, get in touch with you because maybe they want to work together, maybe they want to record with you, or just learn more about Z-Fest, how can they contact you?
I have a super easy email that's for non-Z-Fest stuff. It's adam@adamcolt.com. That's about as clear as you can get.
Yeah.
And then for Z-Fest, I'm adam@z-fest.org. Sorry. We do have the .com, but we changed it to the .org. So if you send it to the .com, that was overtaken by Russian hackers. So I'm using the .org.
Oh, no.
It's unfortunate, but a good clarification.
We just turned it off, but they don't actually have it, but we turned it off. So
makes sense. All right. So before we let you go to have the rest of your evening, we do have one final question. It's the big one. Can you tell us what do you want to be most remembered by overall?
That's hilarious because that is something that I have put a lot of thought into for years. And it's funny because it does come back to Z-Fest as like I put my stamp on the planet here a little bit.
Right.
It was my idea. I have had a ton of help from Margie and John through the years, and other people that have come and gone. So I haven't done it alone, could never have done it alone. But yeah, it's kind of my baby, and it's great to be thought of for this and remembered as the creator / manager or director of Z-Fest. So yeah, it is Z-Fest. I'd love to be a super famous pop star. I don't think that can happen, but I'll take remembered for Z-Fest. That works.
Yeah, go on to what is it? The Voice or America's Got Talent or something. So
yeah,
try for that.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you, Adam, for joining us. And letting us know all this.
Yep.
Yeah.
My music's on Spotify, people.
There we go. Just under Adam Colt or
Levox, Levox.
That's right. Thank you.
Levox.
All right.
There it is.
Levox.
There is a guy, Gary Levox from Rascal Flatts, so he'll come up a lot.
Oh.
But if you look for, okay, I shouldn't even say this out loud, but I wrote, there's a song called "Love Not Body." If you look up Levox, "Love Not Body," you will almost guaranteed find me. So.
Awesome.
We have it all on our website now, filminminnesota.com. We have a link to Z-Fest there, as well as many other resources now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, Adam, thank you so much for your time and letting us just bombard you with questions. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anytime.
And to all of our listeners, this has been Film in Minnesota.